Okay, we're now live, Chair. We can begin when you're ready.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Adults and Community Scrutiny Committee. I would like to start the meeting by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching this live stream of the meeting through the Council's YouTube page. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is taking place remotely in accordance with current legislation, which make provision for remote attendance at and remote access to council meetings. The meeting is also following Peterborough City Council's virtual meeting protocol. In order for this meeting to run smoothly, I ask several things from members and participants. Firstly, that you keep your video camera switched on with your microphone muted, except when you are invited to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. Democratic Service Team will keep an eye on the participants list to see who wishes to speak. Please be patient if you are not asked to speak straight away, as someone might be in front of you. Democratic Service Team will be monitoring the participants list to see if anybody has dropped out of the meeting, and will try to contact you to provide assistance to rejoin the meeting if this should happen. As with all new systems, we may run into technical problems and ask for your patience. Should this occur, an adjournment of the meeting will be declared while the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible, the meeting will be adjourned until such time as it can be reconvened. Finally, I remind members that virtual meetings are recorded. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, I'll begin to take a roll call of Scrutiny Committee members to establish your presence. When your name is called out, please unmute your microphones, confirm your attendance. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Enkin.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you. I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I'm here.
Councillor Ellis.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor John Fox. I think John Fox is coming late, David, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Councillor Howard.
Good evening, Chair. Present.
Councillor Howe.
Present.
Councillor Iqbal.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Bond.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Yazin.
Present, Chair.
Parish Councillor Neil Boyce.
Present, Chair.
Councillor James Hayes.
Present, Chair.
And obviously myself, Councillor Simons, as Chair. Also in attendance is Adrian Chapman, Service Director, Communities and Partnerships, who will support the committee as lead officer. David Burkamp as Democratic Services Officer, and others members of the Democratic Service Team who will be supporting the meeting in the background in case there are any technical difficulties. Thank you. We'll move to the first agenda item. Apologies for absence, David.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies, but Councillor Fox has advised he'll be joining the meeting 30 minutes late. Thank you.
Thank you. Declaration of interest and whipping declarations. Yeah, I think, okay, I'm on the board of directors of Peterborough Limited, which is in agenda item 6. I will obviously not take part in anything to do with Peterborough Limited. Anybody else? Councillor Bisbee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As the Acting Police and Crime Commissioner, in relation to item 5, I fund that partnership, and also I have people who attend that meeting, and sometimes I attend myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, agenda item 3, minutes of Adults and Community Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 19th of January 2021, pages 3 to 8 of the agenda. Is everybody happy with the minutes? David? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, to interrupt. Just on the previous item, could I ask Councillor Bisbee if he intends to step down or not for that item that he declared an interest for?
Yes, I think I should step down from that item. So I believe I'm put into the waiting room.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Bisbee go in the waiting room, David. Okay, yeah, for that item. Okay, is everybody happy with those minutes? Okay, I see no objections, so I take it as the minutes are agreed. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 4. Any calling of cabinet member or key officer decisions, David?
No call-ins this evening, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda 5, Safer Peterborough Partnership Board report, pages 9 to 20 of the agenda. Please note that we will be sitting as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee for this item only. I'd like to welcome the following officers who will present this report. Rob Hill, Assistant Director Community Safety, Claire George, Head of Prevention and Enforcement Services, Superintendent Kate Henderson, Cambridgeshire Constabulary. Okay, Rob, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. I'm delighted to be presenting this tonight with Kate Anderson, who's the new Police Commander for Peterborough. So I'm sure you'll welcome her in post, and also Claire George, as always, our Head of Prevention Enforcement Service. So I assume, members, you've had opportunity to read the paper, so I won't refer to the full content. But by way of summary, I thought I would like to draw your attention to some key points. Firstly, to confirm that the Safer Peterborough Partnership, as agreed by this committee, has been focusing in the last year on 3 key priority areas. Number 1, no particular order, but we've been working on high harm, and that's dealing with those individuals and issues that cause a disproportionate impact in our communities. We've been focusing on street sex working and street exploitation, and also on drug intervention. So Kate and Claire will shortly provide an overview of the excellent work that we've been doing in these areas. But in addition to the focus areas, the partnership has led the work to establish the Peterborough Hub, which is leading the way in how partners, including our volunteer networks, come together to support the response to COVID-19. The partnership has also completed 2 domestic homicide reviews in the last year. Both have been concluded, and the findings of which have just been approved by the Home Office. A number of recommendations have been accepted to enhance support for victims of domestic violence. Notably, this included recognising a point previously raised by this committee to improve outreach support for victims from Eastern European communities. And as a direct result, we have now been able to recruit specialist support officers who are now working in that area. In respect to the priority areas I discussed, I'd like to hand over, if I may, to Superintendent Kate Anderson and also Claire George, who will be able to provide a more detailed summary of our activities. Kate, can I go to you first, please?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for inviting me here today to discuss some of the work that we've been doing in partnership with the SPP. I'm going to start by talking about Op Spotlight, which is our drugs intervention. As outlined in the paper, we have a really comprehensive 4Ps plan where we recognise that there is a role for prevention, as well as pursuing those who are responsible, protecting those who are vulnerable to exploitation, and also preparing ourselves in terms of how we can work in partnership to tackle drug dealing in our areas of Peterborough. The working group's now well established. We have consistent attendance from a number of partnership and also voluntary agencies that are supporting us. And also we've been able to develop a cuckooing toolkit to identify those people who are vulnerable to being cuckooed. We've had some really notable enforcement successes. Just as one example of the enforcement work undertaken by the team, in just 1 week at the end of January, they undertook 3 warrants and successfully identified and dismantled cannabis factories at each property. They seized drugs worth up to £725,000 and seized more than £100,000 worth of cash and 2 high-performance vehicles. We have multiple arrests. One of the suspects has already pleaded guilty and is awaiting sentencing, and 2 further were charged and remanded, and the investigation is still being pursued and ongoing in relation to the others arrested. And we'll continue to tackle those who are causing the most harm in this area. And we've got further planned activity for the coming months, working closely with our neighbourhood policing teams. It's fair to say that we've seen a rise in our violence against local drug users, linked to a single individual possibly enforcing perceived drug debts. We continue to try to tackle those who we believe are exploiting others involved in drug dealing. And what we've found during the last few weeks is that we have been able to prosecute one of those individuals that we believe was essentially committing a modern slavery offence, and he has been charged in relation to that and other offences linked to our drug dealing in the local area. If I move on now to discuss the street sex working and street exploitation, this project is run with 3 clear strands: protecting victims, disrupting offenders and supporting communities. Again, it's a very much a partnership approach. Our Protecting Victims meeting is chaired by a local worker from the Women's Resources Centre. The police lead on disrupting offenders and supporting communities. We have our partnership working with the council and also police to tackle that. Above that, we have a tactical board where we look at how we can evaluate and also secure further funding. And actually, we've been successful in some of the funding bids that we've put through so far, which I'll come on to. As part of the Street Sex Working project, we have a housing project that runs alongside that called Empowering Women Everywhere. We've identified a property that is suitable and we've been able to purchase that with the support of some of the partnership working. Recruitment is currently underway through the Cambridge Women's Resource Centre for a project coordinator and 5 support workers. And again, that's funding that's been sourced through the MHCLG and also through another charitable foundation to assist us with financing that project. The monthly victims meetings continue to provide opportunities for really good problem solving. That's done on a risk basis, and we have good attendance from a number of key partners to be able to make sure that we identify both how we can support an individual, but also those broader thematic pieces that we can pick up around aspects such as housing. And we've had really good buy-in from partners around that. We've been fortunate enough to receive £3,000 to create a training film with partners to help people to identify how they can spot and safeguard potential victims of modern slavery. And that training will cover both forced labour and also sexual exploitation. We continue to work closely with the Police Public Protection Unit who manage sex offenders in the community. And we are working with them to prosecute those people who are responsible for exploiting others. Just in this last month, we have had one male who was in breach of a sexual harm prevention order who has been charged and remanded because of concerns around links to the women that we've been supporting. Alongside this, we're also looking at how we can enforce those individuals who continue to exploit through curb crawling. And we've identified a potential provider for our out-of-court disposals process. That will see individuals fined when they curb crawl, and £100 from each of those fines will go back directly into funding local women's services in the community as well as the investment in the training, which hopefully will help educate people around their behaviours and the harm that it's causing. We're also working closely with some of our national leads around this, ACC Vizovic, so that we can showcase some of the work that we're doing in Peterborough. We have been asked to speak at a number of national events to showcase the work that's ongoing, and really positively, one of our outreach workers got a BEM in the New Year's Queen's Honours list in relation to the work around sex working as well. So what we're doing locally, we know, is really making a difference, both locally for the women we're supporting, for the communities that we know really want to see this change, so that there's less curb crawling going on in the area and that these women don't feel that that's their only option, and also through driving forward that national piece and understanding what's working effectively for police in UK.
Thank you for that. Is it Claire? Claire George,
yeah.
if you want to.
Thank you. As part of the Safer Peterborough response, we've developed the problem solving group. This will be a delivery arm of the Safer Peterborough partnership, and it's got the purpose of managing and coordinating a partnership response to local based community safety issues across Peterborough, and this includes high risk antisocial behaviour cases. One of the key aspects of the PSG work is to provide a multi-agency approach to tackling high harm nominals and high vulnerability victims. So it is really a group that's multi-agency. It's made up of different departments from Peterborough City Council, not just the Prevention Enforcement Service. We've got representation from Targeted Youth Support Service as well as regulatory services. It's also got membership from Cambridge Constabulary, Cross Keys Homes, other social registered landlords, Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Clinical Commissioning Group, the National Probation Service. But it's also important, this group, as we move forward and start looking at these issues, it is all evidence based. So we review calls for service, look at the evidence when we're directing resource to it. All the outcomes are monitored and reported back to the SPP board at their meetings. But going forward, like I say, it needs to be that we link with Think Communities as well. So they've got a voice on it. So if an area, because there's been various issues, we can go in, but we link with them. So as agencies pull out, you know, there is a community response around it, and community are engaged in solving the issues in some of the areas. Yeah, so that's really it in a nutshell. It's still early days. The group is chaired either by myself or Chief Inspector Dan Quigley. We've got a good buy-in from partnerships, and as problems and that arise, any agency can refer into it. They're taken to the group for this multi-agency response.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Kate, as well for that. Chair, if I can just finalise, if I may, by drawing members' attention to section 4.10 in the report, which basically summarises the excellent work being carried out by the SPP Delivery Board through its leadership of the Peterborough Hub. And that's working across agencies and an extensive network of over 90 volunteer organisations to support our residents in dealing with COVID-19. You will see that we're extending help in many, many vital areas, including the coordination and delivery of food and medical supplies, providing financial support for those in economic hardship, offering a befriending service to isolated residents, and even things like transporting people to vaccinations. So all of this has been truly a partnership effort, working across volunteers, faith groups, parish councils and other community groups to mobilise help in a way that we know will benefit the city way beyond COVID. Chair, if I may, I'll stop there. I'll stop the overview there, but I hope you found this update of use and would welcome any comments or questions from the committee. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up to questions. Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you. Mine's just a very short, quick one on this. The term cookering and the cooking toolkits under the drug intervention on 4.9. Can you just explain what that actually means? I think it's Kate Anderson who probably did mention it as well.
Yeah, so cuckooing is where individuals who are involved in criminal activity, in this circumstance we're talking about drug dealing, will identify vulnerable adults, and what they'll seek to do is to move into their property and to use that as a place from which they can sell drugs or undertake other criminal activity. So really what we're doing is trying to encourage partner agencies to do vulnerable adult referrals and to adopt that partnership problem solving approach. So where we know there is an individual who is vulnerable to that exploitation, that we can identify them and safeguard them. And we can explore that through a number of different ways. So we can either liaise with housing providers to say, actually, are there regulations that mean we can ban the other individuals from visiting them? Or it could be that we look for support in terms of housing moves, or it could be if they have the right support and they have the confidence to be able to report to us about what's happening, that's where we can look at whether or not we can pursue potential offences. And that's where some of our vulnerable adults who have been targeted, we've been able to secure, like I say, a charge in relation to modern day slavery in relation to part of that type of exploitation of vulnerable adults, although in that situation it wasn't cuckooing per se.
Councillor Julie Hale.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report and congratulations on your fantastic work in our communities. Just wanted to ask a question about bullet point 4.9, the Safer Peterborough Partnership board priorities, particularly around drug intervention. With regard to that, which organisations are on the working group that's specific to drug intervention? And would it be possible to get ward councillors more involved, as I'm sure there's more ways that we can contribute to this work? The crime around drug use is becoming higher profile, and with our links into communities, I can't help but feel we could support your work in more ways than we already are. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And thank you for your offer of support around this as well. So our drug and alcohol services locally are through Aspire, Change, Grow, Live. They're very well linked into both our Ops Spotlight, which is our drugs intervention, but also actually they contribute to the work we're doing in the other SPP partnerships as well. So they are very well attuned to some of the challenges that we've got that spread across a number of different cohorts that we're trying to support. If you're happy, what I can do is I can put you in contact with the chair for that meeting, and maybe they can set up a meeting just to identify how best they can take forward that offer of support, because I'm sure it will be welcomed.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Yazin, please.
Thank you. I have two questions, please, if I may, Chair. One is around domestic violence. I would have liked to see a bit more information in the main body of the report. If we could either have a report circulated just to outline some of the work that has been done locally within the community. Is of course with COVID, the demand has been more higher than ever. So I would have liked to see a bit more information in regards to that. And then I've got a question on the hub. So the report says that we have made contact with 1,400 individuals. Have we identified how many of those 1,400 individuals that may require our support on a more long-term basis? Because of course with COVID, some of the effects may be on a more long-term basis. So how are we proposing on supporting those individuals that may need our support? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yazin. If I can just, I can certainly answer the first part around domestic violence. From a Safer Peterborough partnership point of view, whilst domestic violence is very much factors in there because of the domestic homicide reviews, the actual work around the broader domestic homicide, violence piece is carried out for a much broader partnership. So if I may, I would suggest that I could bring you something back very specific from that domestic violence partnership to give you that information that you seek, albeit for a report at a later committee or for a briefing note, whichever is preferable.
A briefing note will be fine, thank you.
Right, thank you. And the second part, I have to confess, I haven't got the firm facts behind that. I am absolutely reassured that the work we do with individuals is not a one hit, it's ongoing. And where there are support needs that require ongoing support, it does happen. But I couldn't give you the figure. But I am confident that it does happen. And what is very important is the Peterborough Hub is here to stay. It's not something that we've just brought in as a result of COVID. We've made a commitment that we will continue with that work beyond COVID as well. I don't know if, Adrian, did you want to add to that at all?
Thanks, Chair. If that's acceptable to you, I was going to make the point. I did have my hand up actually, just to make the same point that Rob's making, which is that the hub is not going anywhere. We've kind of recognised the value of having a place where anybody in need, not just those affected by the pandemic, but anybody in need can reach a human being within the local authority, regardless of that need, as early as possible. Because if we can help somebody or a family or an individual with a set of complex issues quickly and early, it clearly helps them get back on track and also hopefully prevents an escalation of issues to a more serious level. So the priority initially has been to make sure that anybody in immediate crisis or need has been able to access that support. That's the 1,400 people that you mentioned. A good proportion of those will have continued to have a relationship with us, in some cases via the hub itself, so no more than that, other than reaching out occasionally, maybe requesting food or other urgent supplies. And in other cases, there would have been referrals through to either colleagues in social care or education, or more likely out to our voluntary and community sector partners to connect those individuals up to community-based organisations. But the team, when they're effectively triaging those calls for help and recognise an ongoing need, very much maintain that relationship, and that's the model that we've kind of recognised as needing to be made permanent going forwards, way beyond the pandemic.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown, you've got a tick. It's not a hand. Is that a hat? It's not a hand. It's a tick on yours.
To check it.
Thank you.
Right.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you. Yeah, my question was around the ability to police drugs in the various stages of lockdown we've had. Has that been an extra challenge? I would guess. Has it sent things more underground, or has working with the sort of closer working with the neighbourhood watch helped make it easier? In fact,
yeah, that's a really, really good question. So I think it's In some ways, it's been simpler insofar as I think if there are individuals who are out in groups during lockdown, it actually presents us with some really easy opportunities and opportunities to both engage with them under the COVID legislation and to talk to them about why they're out. And sometimes that then gives us enough to be able to undertake things like stop and search. And also they stand out more because there are fewer people out and about. So actually where you see individuals who are in a certain area and we know that people either have to be out because they're exercising or going to a shop, again, it can be a bit of an indicator for us. We also know that for some individuals, that has meant that they're more likely to be at home. So sometimes it is easier for us to find individuals who are suspected of crimes. But also the downside of that is that some of that really rich contextual community-based intelligence, we don't necessarily have the same conversations that we would do in passing with members of the public who are walking down the street because people are doing quite the right thing and abiding by the COVID legislations and staying at home where they can. So in some ways, there are some things that are better and there are some things that are harder. So sorry, that's a bit of a mixed answer, but the reality is it's a constantly evolving picture around some of these things.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Section, what is it? 4.9, you talk about a project on empowering women everywhere. Now, what's the duration of that project? Is it a long time or is it a short term?
So we've got two pots of funding for it. One at the moment, we've secured 12 months worth of funding for the 5 support workers in the property, and we've secured 15 months of funding for the project support worker and also an outreach worker. So at the moment, we know that we are financially, we've set that up for that 12 months, but we are going to need to do further funding work to be able to secure the long-term sustainability of the project. We've been very lucky that Cross Keys Homes have supported with the capital investment for the property itself. So actually we know that's self-sustaining once we've got the residents within the property. However, we are going to be over the next 12 months continuing to seek additional central national funding to support that project going forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, I've got stay in the Safer Peterborough Partnership Plan. Residents' top concern is fly tipping, or one of them is fly tipping. With regard to surveillance cameras, can you assure us, this committee, that they've been actively used and how successful are they, please?
Thank you, Chair. Clay, can I ask you to update as we pick this up elsewhere as well?
Yeah, but they are being actively used across the city, and yes, we are seeing results. We're getting a number of positive hits and collecting evidence with them. So yeah, I can reassure you that they are out and about.
Thank you for that. Okay, any more questions from members? Okay, if there are no further questions, I would like to note the recommendations in the report, which is for the committee to scrutinise the content of the report, noting and commenting on the activity of the SPP board. Are the committee satisfied that we have done this? Please indicate if you're not happy by raising your virtual hand. Okay, thank you. I'd like to say thank Kate Anderson for taking the time to report to this committee. It's much appreciated. And obviously, she may leave the meeting if she so wishes. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 6, Culture and Leisure Services, pages 21 to 60 of the agenda. I'd like to welcome Councillor Steve Allen, Cabinet Member for Housing, Culture and Recreation, to present this report alongside Adrian Chapman, Service Director of Communities and Partnerships. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. You know, only since 5 minutes ago that I was with you presenting my portfolio holder report, which indeed covers most of the stuff in tonight's report. Since the report on the 17th of November, though, we've been through tears, all kinds of tears and lockdowns, and hopefully we see some light at the end of the tunnel shortly, which will allow us to enjoy the culture, recreation facilities that are spoken about in tonight's report. I'm tonight going to defer to Adrian Chapman, the officer, to present, and I'm here to take any questions should you wish to ask. Thank you so much, committee members.
Thanks, Councillor Allen. We're doing a double act tonight. You can take your pick on which double act you want to model us against, but don't tell me if it's insulting. It's a real pleasure actually to be talking again to you about culture and leisure, and actually a real pleasure to be presenting something which has such a lot of ambition behind it, which are two important pieces of work that are set out in the report this evening. One on the active lifestyle strategy, which I'll briefly cover, but the main feature of the report this evening is the new culture strategy for the city. Both of those things are really important in the post-pandemic, when we get there, situation we find ourselves in as far as recovery and long-term growth of the city is concerned. So it is a real pleasure to be talking about something other than the immediate COVID crisis and starting to talk a bit more about the future in our city. But before I do, briefly, just to refer to Peterborough Limited and to City Culture, just to reassure members that the relationship with both of those organisations, as you know, both part of the City Council family, continue to strengthen. The City Council holds full accountability for all of the services, leisure being delivered by Peterborough Limited, and culture and heritage and arts and libraries delivered by City Culture Peterborough. In both cases, they're very significantly focused on the impact of lockdown and the implications now of the roadmap for reopening, which gives us some hope. In the case of Peterborough Limited, I'll just probably pick out the fact that we're already beginning work to reopen the Lido for an extended season. And that's going to be a really fantastic feature, hopefully, of the 2021 calendar year. If our rates in Peterborough continue to fall, COVID rates continue to fall, and we're looking forward to a long and successful season there. And in the case of City Culture, lots of work going on around reopening the Key Theatre as swiftly as possible with a really exciting and ambitious programme. We obviously have the medium-term plan to extend the museum through the Towns Fund bid, which will become the home for the internationally renowned Must Farm logboats. Working quite closely with Whittlesea Town Council as well on the other end of that project, which is for them to create a visitor centre at King's Dyke. And then in the middle, Flag Fen, where we've already enjoyed some funding from Historic England to help with the restoration of the log boats, and some really exciting plans to convert Flag Fen to a really exciting visitor destination for national and international visitors, as well as local people, of course. So some really interesting and exciting prospects, despite, I think, the circumstances we find ourselves in. Just to quickly cover off 4.2, the active lifestyle strategy. Members may be aware that we have an existing strategy, and that's set out in Appendix 1 of the report today. That strategy was produced now some time ago, certainly pre-pandemic, and was very much a co-produced effort with lots and lots of partners. And that partnership board that oversaw the development of that strategy still sits today to ensure action follows. But what's clear is that things have changed significantly, clearly, over the last year. The need for people to be healthy and fit and to be able to access health and fitness in ways that make sense to people needs to be very much reflected in a refreshed strategy. It's not the case any longer that people will probably choose, first and foremost, to go to the gym, for example. They may not feel able, willing, or able or willing to do so, or even be able to afford to do so. So actually we need to, for example, make better use of our outdoor spaces that are open to all and make them a real feature of our health and wellbeing strategy going forwards. So the proposition this evening, and we're asking for your endorsement for this, is to embark on a refresh of that strategy. It's not yet complete, which is one of the reasons why I'm asking for your endorsement. But to link the refresh strategy very much to the findings of our work so far on the pandemic and how people from different communities and with different backgrounds are more adversely affected by issues such as this virus. But also we know we've got ongoing health inequalities in the city, and we think there may be more appropriate ways to try and address those challenges. So that's ask number one for this evening, really, is for you to support and endorse the refresh of that strategy. Be assured it will continue to be a co-produced effort, and we will be bringing it back through this committee in the new municipal year at various stages to seek your input and comments. The second major feature of this report is at 4.3 and in Appendix 2. Just want to spend slightly longer on, and that's the development of the culture strategy for the city. And it is a culture strategy for Peterborough, not for the City Council. This is a really vital tool in our box that's currently absent. And yet culture in our city needs to play such a central part in the regrowth, the rebirth of the city, the recovery of our communities post-pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I get really tired of people describing Peterborough as a cultural cold spot and you know, a place that people travel out of to get to decent culture and heritage venues. And actually my experience, and I've become close to this obviously since the Vivacity contract has ended, is that Peterborough is awash with some incredible talent and some amazing cultural organisations, from amateur dramatic groups, informal groups, right through to very professional companies. We've got some incredible heritage right on our doorstep, and I include in that the cathedral right through to places like Flagfen, the museum, little gems that we just need to exploit much more effectively, positively exploit. And we've got some amazing venues. The Key Theatre is one. I think many towns and cities would cry out for a theatre right alongside a river and an embankment, and the growth of that part of town in the coming years with the university arriving just presents such an incredible opportunity to bring that offer to life for that part of town and for visitors coming into Peterborough. So the strategy, as you can probably gather, is really important to me, and it's really important to this city. And I know Councillor Allen is heavily sponsoring this piece of work. It's a piece of work that is trying to bring together the voices of a lot of professionals in the field, but also the voices of our communities. And I think one of the issues we're trying to avoid is to create a cultural offering which is highbrow and elitist only, at the expense of being accessible to everybody. And not everybody wants to go along to highbrow performances or settings that feel austere or inaccessible. Rather, they want to probably enjoy something on their doorstep, something which has been produced by their local community. And there's room for all across the spectrum. So quickly to pick out some of the important slides that are in Appendix 2, if I may. So if I could ask you to go to page 53 of the pack. 2 slides on that page. The first slide describes what we mean by culture. That's the information in the circle there. It's not just about the theatre and arts sector. It is about reading, it's about learning, it's about heritage, it's about people. And the vision, if you like, the overarching vision for our culture strategy is for it to be a strategy that can connect people and organisations, that it's open to visitors and residents alike, that it's a mixed offering, as I've just described, and that it's exciting. It feels innovative, it feels bold, it feels brave. The second slide on that page describes our aspiration for the cultural strategy, which is a 10-year strategy effective until 2030, or at least that's what's proposed. We want it to be ambitious, but have that ambition shared across all of our partners, all of our communities, all of our members. We want it to reflect the diversity of life in Peterborough, to be creative, to offer a range of cultural activities and so on. You can see there that ambition articulated. I just want to ask you to turn to page 55 now, finally, and then I'll finish. And that's just to describe or summarise the second of the 2 slides you see on page 55. This is the one that's headed up Pixels. Really, these are the 5 themes, the main themes for the strategy that have been identified by the group of partners that are working alongside the local authority to support this work. And we feel that all 5 of these key components need to come together to form our bold, ambitious, but very realistic and very deliverable strategy for the city. So the cultural strategy has to be about setting a clear mission with a clear vision, a clear offer, strong empowerment for citizens and for the cultural sector. It has to be about people, by which we mean communities, but also audiences. and those delivering our cultural offering. It importantly has to be about place, and I think we can use our strategy in a post-pandemic Peterborough to reset Peterborough's identity, to give people a sense of belonging again and a sense of pride and ownership in their community as part of a wider recovery strategy. It is about connection, and this is about the point about making sure that the strategy reflects the diversity and richness of our city. And of course, it's about money, and none of this can happen without appropriate revenue. That's revenue in the pockets of our population to be able to afford to access some of these facilities, but also inward investment from organisations such as the Arts Council. You may have noticed in the report that the Arts Council are actually co-producing the strategy with us, which is, I think, a really powerful position to be in, and hopefully aligns us well to future funding opportunities that the Arts Council provide. So a really aspirational strategy, but one I think that's really vital for the positive recovery of our city after this most awful of years, and I think gives a bit of hope and shines a bit of light on how Peterborough might start to look and feel for both residents and visitors alike. And happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the enthusiasm, Adrian. It's really good. Okay, Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you. As far as this is concerned, there's some really good stuff in it. The active lifestyle strategy, I think, is really good. But I'm just worried. Things cost money. A lot of people have been on furlough. They've maybe taken breaks from their mortgage and car payments, etc. So they're not going to be able to pay for things. People's health has gone down, the mental health. And some of those people, as I know from people that I've been speaking to, the doctors are saying that they need to get specific physical things. And they used to go to gyms, and doctors used to give them, was it 3 months or 4 months or whatever it is, free in the gym. I think we're going to have a lot more people that are going to require this kind of thing. But it's great that we've got the other things outside, like ferry meadows and what have you. But I'm just worried then that they may not go to those places because of parking fees and other things. So I think it's something that we, is there anything that you've got in place to look at, the cost of these things? I know these places have got to make money, but it's for the community. And as you say, it's about making our community healthier, fitter, so that they can actually go to work, they can actually earn money and bring money into our city. So I really am behind this, but I'm just wondering about those issues and how you plan to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bisbee. And unsurprisingly, wholeheartedly agree with you, having been at the front of the on the front line in terms of the council's response to the pandemic. I've experienced, as Charlotte will have done, and colleagues in adult social care, some of the people that have been more adversely affected by the pandemic, and not just physically, but mentally as well. We're seeing that more and more. So I absolutely agree. And for me, this is about creating two things, really. One, first of all, a strategy which aligns to some of the funding, frankly, that we know is going to become available. We have to be canny here and align our strategy to match the likely funding strategies of organisations such as Sport England. We've chosen carefully our timing here. We know that Sport England's funding strategy is likely to be published in the autumn. And we want to take our time to get the active lifestyles strategy refresh right, but we also don't want to hang around in case we miss the boat as far as external inward investment is concerned. That's really important. But secondly, this is about making a blended offer available to our communities. So many people will want to choose to attend a formal leisure or fitness facility. They will want to make use of a new swimming pool, or go to a Hampton gym, for example, or one of the community gyms. But equally, the active lifestyle strategy will include a number of free of charge facilities. So I've mentioned our outdoor space, of which we have ample. And there's a lot of outdoor space that we're currently reviewing because we don't really exploit it for outdoor leisure. A lot of people don't feel it's a place to go to walk, and often walking isn't seen as a fitness mechanism, if you like. So I think there's an awful lot we can do in the strategy that isn't necessarily about fee earning. And we have an incredibly good relationship with our health colleagues, and particularly primary care, who you're referring there to the kind of health prescription model. And I think we would want to take the opportunity to make sure those opportunities are fully included in the strategy going forwards. And, you know, we have to understand the consequences financially of those things, but we know that if we don't get that right, the cost to our statutory partners and services is far greater. So we'll make sure that that concept is very much drafted into the strategy. And as I say, you'll see it back here anyway for appropriate scrutiny.
Can I just have a second question, Chairman?
Yeah, very quick one.
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's not a question as much as I'm really behind, you know, getting people out and encouraging them, and that's why I put forward about the cycling, bringing it back to the city, etc. But I think there needs to be a lot of work done on encouraging people out to get back in, because I think it's very easy for people to get institutionalized. So, you know, have you got a media kind of way of getting that out to everybody?
So there's a strong link, I'll be brief, Chair, on this. There's a very strong link to our Think Communities approach here with the active lifestyle strategy. And we are lucky enough to have a dedicated communications and media specialist joining us and the team in a week or so's time. And their role was very much about helping our communities to recover safely and at the right time, but to do that through you know, really good quality communications, really good quality community engagement activity that helps people ease themselves back into whatever lifestyle they choose to take going forwards.
Thank you for that. Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Allen and Adrian, for your report. A couple of questions, if I may. I just wanted to ask about the Lido and whether you had discovered any additional uses for it off-season, because that was something that had been discussed previously. And also on page 58, it says, ensuring money spent on combating the climate emergency is aligned to the strategy's cultural ambitions. And I know that also with the Towns Fund, that there's a lot of talk about the new activity centre at Ferry Meadows, which is actually within the ward that I represent, being kind of central to that. But there's a concern there about more traffic coming out to an area of the city that we don't have that much traffic coming in at the moment, and that's a concern. So how are we balancing getting people more involved in using these fantastic resources with actually our ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. The Lido, we have an abundance of ideas and therefore opportunity, but critically we're keen to work really closely with the Friends of the Lido group, who really have got such an incredible passion for that facility. I think, as we all have, actually, it's such an iconic building in our city. We have so far held 2 meetings of all of the Friends groups that exist across our culture and leisure portfolio, and then are in the process right now of having individualised meetings with Friends groups, including the Friends of the Lido. That's coming up soon, Councillor Allen and I, and the Friends group, and they have themselves come up with lots of suggestions about usage 365 days of the year. So you know, all sorts of things of opening it up as a venue for concerts, for markets. Actually, the boiler is so efficient in there that actually the water is very pleasantly warm. So actually opening up for an extended season isn't difficult, and indeed many Lidos operate throughout the year. So I think really anything is on the table. What I'd warmly welcome are any suggestions that any member has got for how that facility might be used. I should just point out that tonight we're looking at just the vision and values element of the strategy, not the strategy itself. So there will be ample time for you to come back with further thoughts and ideas. And at that point, we'll be presenting some options anyway, I think, around our thinking around the future of the Lido.
If I can just follow up Adrian's point there. I'm sorry, you were continuing, Adrian. I thought you'd finished. I do think we need to reinforce how we are engaging with all of the friends groups, and the ideas for all of our assets will come from the ground, as it were, which is the way to make things happen and achieve what the public are wanting from us. Sorry to interrupt, Adrian.
Not at all, Councillor. That's fine. Thank you very much. I was just going to move on anyway. So you were right to interject at that point onto the climate query, which I think is a very valid point. I can't comment on obviously the individual example given, but I think the point is well made that increasing our facilities potentially leads to more traffic. So there are a lot of connections to be made here around, for example, public transport and how the combined authority is developing a public transport strategy for the city. But equally, and perhaps where we've got slightly more control, it's about making sure that what we're offering is as hyper-local as possible. We can't replicate a swimming pool in every ward, but we can try and work, as we are doing, particularly in the case of the north of the city with the Warrington members, for example, create facilities that are more dispersed across the city and that do reduce travel, the need to travel across, and make those facilities good quality facilities, so that not everything is in the new town areas, the growth communities, but actually more established communities have facilities they could be proud of, and therefore they're not inclined to have to jump in their car and travel long distances. So it is a dilemma, and I'm not sure we've yet got the answer, but I think for me it's about making sure there's a good distribution of opportunity and that we work closely with our combined authority colleagues to make sure there are other options to travel than jumping in a car.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of short questions. First of all, you probably expect me to ask this. Okay, we're on a roadmap, but is there any early indications about timings for things like the reopening of libraries, other facilities, including Bretton Water Park, which obviously is a keen interest of mine. And my other question is regarding the culture strategy around the organisations and the partnerships. It doesn't mention the Cresset. This is 4.33 on page 24. Is there any reason for that? I presume they're included because you were saying about it being more of a Peterborough-wide strategy. And just a quick comment on the point about the environmental impact of facilities. I think it's important, and as we go forward, that there is a environmental choice for transport. Hence the Bretton Water Park. I've asked for some bike racks to be put in Bretton Park as part of the town's bid, just as an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. So as far as sadly, typically I don't have my roadmap document with me, so I can't recall the dates by which some of these facilities can reopen, but be absolutely assured, and in fact we were meeting today with both the MD of Peterborough Limited and the CEO of City Culture Peterborough. We've asked that they be ready to open the moment that the roadmap enables facilities to open. And if I may, I'll send a short email to committee tomorrow with details of the relevant dates set out in the roadmap against each service, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can come in, I have a roadmap in front of me. It's only a pre-seed version, but the important thing I believe is that indoor leisure gyms and swimming pools can open on the 12th of April. I think that's the key date for getting a lot of things going which involve indoor activity.
Perfect, thank you. You're way more prepared than I am.
Councillor Fox.
Sorry, my question on the Cresset.
Yeah, so I'll just very quickly cover off the other 2 points. The Cresset absolutely, along with the new theatre, are very much part of discussions. The partners mentioned in the report are those that are sitting on the core strategy development group, but there are myriad partners involved in conversations and hundreds of cultural organisations, for example, that sit on the cultural forum. So the key theatre, the new theatre and the Cresset have already had several meetings as a trio and have determined to create programmes that don't compete with one another critically. But actually, we're fishing in the same pond here. Let's try and make sure we develop a programme which is inclusive for all and doesn't actually create competition where competition isn't necessary. And just to confirm for you, for the avoidance of doubt, Bretton Water Park very much featuring in our reopening plans as reported in previous meetings. And again, we'll confirm when as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Councillor John Fox.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, one of the most popular activities at the moment, especially out in the rural areas, is cycling. And the initial outlay is reasonably cheap. And then the ongoing isn't that expensive. As you know, I put a motion in the full council, which I'm pleased to say was 100% supported, to try to open up the Peaker, linking up the Car Dyke, linking to Warrington, Gunthorpe, Pass, and then on to Eye. And after doing that, I've made a few phone calls and got a few messages. I feel as if I'm inadequate, because I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you have, Adrian, that Boston to Peterborough Wetland Corridor business case, I don't know if you know about that, but if not, I'll send it to you. This is a big business case. They're working with Inland Waterways, Environmental Agency, and it's Lincolnshire County Council, and they want this Boston to Peterborough. They want to open up the whole Car Dyke as it was, which goes past Flag Fen, and also incorporate cycleways along that. Now, the reason they want to open up the waterway is because it's basically linking Boston with Peterborough across to Northampton, which then goes to Grand Union Canal, but equally then up to Nottingham and across back to Boston. I think it's a 58-mile link. Now, we need to be talking to organisations like this, because if they're going to do it and they've got the same idea, the money they get, if they get it, you know, and I really hope they do, then that will save us doing what they're probably doing. So we need to link. I spoke to James Palmer about this, so hopefully, but it has to come from the council, Adrian. So if you can link with them, that would bring more activity, because I still say, sadly, that I think Peterborough is lacking a cycling vision. I will be, after the election, if I'm still here, be putting a joint motion with some certain other councillor who's on the working group, and that will be to look into cycling in a bigger way, to increase more linking up different communities, because I think that's the way forward as well. Get more people out on cycles safely, in safe environment, to get them fit. And I've been liaising with Steve Allen on this, and I know he's fully supported. The only other thing I'd like to mention before I finish is thank you for putting a bit in about the veterans. I noticed that, and I'm really pleased. It took a couple of years, no disrespect to you, but it's on there now, and that's a good way forward. Thank you very much indeed.
Here, and thank you very much for the information about the initial project. I wasn't aware. It's possible that Jamie Fenton is, but if you were able to send me some details, I'd really appreciate it. That sounds so exciting.
It does, and I spoke to the chap who's leading it, and he said, and now I don't know if this was right, that it goes very close to Flag Fen. As I say, most of that area from Eye to the Neen has been filled in, or it's only a very small shallow dike. But they're talking about opening it up completely, so we might as well get in there if we can.
Okay, Councillor Boyce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, Councillor Allen, are you aware of the John Clare Countryside Partnership, either of you? And if not, it's a partnership where 16 parish councils have joined up to promote and enhance the natural environment and also the heritage in the rural areas. I have a meeting with Richard Astle and Councillor Celesti later in the month to discuss it. We've already got £26,000 worth of funding that's been raised through various grants and parish councils. And we're also looking at the option of using the river to bring the inner city residents out to the rural areas. And I was just asking if you'd like, I can possibly get you the invite to the meeting as well.
If I may come in, please, Chair, through you. Thank you, Councillor Boyce. I wasn't aware of it. I know of the John Clare sort of project, but I haven't got the detail. So if you could forward to me the detail, I would find it very interesting. and I would indeed be supportive. Thank you.
And just for everyone's reassurance, in fact, tomorrow I'm meeting with Richard, myself, and with Councillor Walsh, who has, I think, been tasked with overseeing that piece of work. And so any connection, Neil, that we can make there, let's exploit that. I think, you know, our rural communities, our rural areas are a little gem. And I often describe parts of the north of our city, the northwest, as feeling like the Cotswolds. They're a really amazing place just to spend a bit of time. And you know, whilst we don't necessarily want to flood those areas with thousands of tourists, you know, there is an opportunity there to really get people to see those places and to really make some amazing inroads into our environmental agenda through the work in the countryside and how we might use those facilities better. So yeah, thanks for the flag.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Sandra Bond, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got 3 questions in reference to Peterborough Limited 411 on page 22, paragraph 5 or V, whatever it is. What it is you've got there, in addition, Council is working with Peterborough Limited to develop children's holiday clubs in support of the holidays, activities and food programmes, which the Council has successfully been awarded funding to support. Well, my 3 questions are all linked. The first question is, where has this funding come from to support the citywide initiative? The second one is, how will children who qualify for the scheme be chosen? Will it be through schools or social services? And my third question is, will ward councillors be given contact details of who to contact so that we're able to advertise the scheme? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. I'm going to feel somewhat inadequate in being able to answer in detail the question. So again, if with committee and chair's agreement, I'll share a brief note tomorrow. The responsibility for this sits within our education directorate, but he and I are based in an office side by side, so I can easily catch up with him in the morning. This is government funding, seen as an extension to the winter support grant funding that's been provided recently for families affected by COVID, and is designed to extend food support alongside holiday activity support. Beyond that, I'd rather not guess and use my memory, and instead get the actual facts, if that's acceptable, and share, as I say, with you a briefing note tomorrow.
Yes, okay. That's acceptable. Thank you, Adrian, and thank you for the good report, both of you. Thank you, Councillor Hallen and Adrian.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for, you know, it's a really informative and positive report. It's really good to see. With the culture strategy, vision and values, do you see elements of that coming into our thinking this year? Or do you think this document more comes to life next year when we've got a full year sort of hopefully back to normal? Thank you.
That's a really great question, and I am looking at Councillor Allen because I know that he will share this view. I'm sure that this is for now. I think that no time like the present, really, and I think we need to start helping our communities, our businesses, our visitors, our organisations think beyond the crisis of the pandemic. And one of the best ways, I think, to do that is through some positive and practical activity. We've got some funding already through the Arts Council and through some of our partners to deliver some cultural activity right now as part of the development, ironically, of the strategy itself. It's creative ways to engage and consult with people through cultural activity. We've got some amazing plans, I mentioned earlier, emerging over Flag Fen and the museum. This is very much a here and now piece of work. The strategy might take a few more weeks to get polished off. What I should actually say is that the strategy itself won't be a very long document, maybe a couple of sides of A4. It actually live as a live being on a microsite. And you know, we'll need to think about access issues for those without digital access. But The idea being that this needs to feel very live, it needs to feel very current, it needs to feel very flexible. And so you will see the emergence of that detail in the not too distant future in the coming weeks. So very much here and now, but also a strategy for the longer term, which will grow and attract, significant inward investment, I'm quite sure.
That's brilliant news.
Thank you, Councillor Howard, and I echo totally what Adrian said. We need to hit the ground running. The consultation period finished on the 1st of March, and we're looking forward progressing delivery from July. There's going to be a pent-up demand for people interacting with each other. Some will want to do it in large crowds, some will want to do it in individual circumstances, and we have to address the public's need and how cautious some people might be. But let's get out there and deliver this to the population. So the summer is a positive time to look forward to.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen. Thank you, Adrian. It's very encouraging, all these ideas that are coming forth. Us really good. Thank you. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'd like to note the recommendations in the report, which are for the committee to scrutinise the current approach being taken by Peterborough Limited and City Culture Peterborough, endorse the approach set out in section 4.2 to refresh the active lifestyle strategy, including agreeing its involvement in its development and agreeing to receive formal reports on its progress throughout the next municipal year, which I think you've already mentioned, Adrian. Comment on the vision and values document, which will underpin the emerging culture strategy as a formal part of the consultation process. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Allen, you may leave the meeting if you're no longer required. Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to agenda item 7, interim recommendations from Task and Finish Group to promote equality and diversity amongst councillors, page 61 to 88 of the report. I think, David, you wanted to come in on this, did you?
Yes, briefly, Chair. Just with regard to the recommendations, the second recommendation in the report makes reference to a referral to the Constitution and Ethics Committee if relevant. It's just to say now it's been confirmed that the Constitution and Ethics Committee will be having a second look at the Model Code of Conduct. So the endorsement of the committee for the Task and Finish Group's recommendations with members' agreement will be going to the Constitution and Ethics Committee before it goes to full council. So it's a bit wordy, but hopefully you get the gist of it.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Councillor Shahid. He was the chair of the Task and Finish Group to introduce the report alongside other members of the group, Councillors Yazin, Bisbee, Fox and Howe. Ian Phillips, Head of Community and Partnership Integration, is also in attendance to assist. Thank you. Councillor Shahid.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Back in July of last year at full council, Councillor Joseph put forward a motion that was agreed at the time, requesting the formation of a Task and Finish Group to review aspects of equality and diversity amongst councillors. This committee agreed the formation of the cross-party group in September of last year, and we've looked at various issues, more work to do, but initially we've looked at the parental leave policy for councillors and the LGA Model Code of Conduct with additionals to it by ourselves. So we're just bringing them to this committee for now for recommendation to take to full council. Thank you. Any questions? Address them to David.
Okay, open it to questions. Okay, Councillor Howard.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm sure this is a thorny issue and I'm sure it's come up in discussions, I wouldn't doubt. But has it been discussed about the possibility during the parental leave of having a voting buddy in full council? Just in the context that if someone has a child and there's a full council meeting within a fortnight of that happening, there's pressure, your vote is the last vote needed for your political party and the position that would put a councillor in. Was it discussed? Is it something that was dismissed, or what, could it not be agreed? Or, what was there any sort of talk about the voting buddy system? Because I think that would really help this policy. Thank you.
To my knowledge, I don't recall us mentioning that. Each member of the group is on this committee, so if I'm wrong, please do jump in.
Well, Councillor Shahid, we did talk about what would happen with ward duties, so I kind of see it as an extension of that. And I think what we decided was it would be down to the political group to decide what to do in that situation.
Well, if the voting body isn't there, I mean, with the ward work, that's slightly different, isn't it? Because I'm a member of the group, but they couldn't have someone have an additional vote, could they, on their behalf? So that's slightly different to me. Have I interpreted it incorrectly?
Well, yeah, Councillor Howard, you could bring a recommendation if you would like.
Yeah, I'd like to, because I think we're
not at this stage, but later on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bisbee, you had your hand up. Who are you taking down again?
Yeah, so yes, I was going to agree with Councillor Shahid, and what he was saying is that we agreed what wards would do and groups, but not about election, voting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no more questions. Okay, therefore, no further questions. I would like to note the recommendation in the report, which are for the committee to recommend to full council the adoption of the parental leave policy for councils as set out in this report attached at Appendix 1. Recommend to full council and the Constitution and Ethics Committee, if required, the adoption of the new LGA Model Code of Conduct, including additional made by Task and Finish Group as detailed in the report and attached as Appendix 2. Are the committee in agreement we have done this? If you don't think we've done this, can you please raise your virtual hand? Okay. I can't see any hands raised. Okay, so the recommendations are agreed. Councillor Howard, did you want to add a recommendation?
Yeah, please, if I may, Chair. I'd like to recommend on the parental leave policy that it's looked into about a voting buddy system for the councillor taking the parental leave.
Okay, David, have you got that?
Sorry, 1 second there, Councillor Simons. Yes, I've got that. Could I just clarify, Councillor Howard, will that be a recommendation back to the Task and Finish group to look into that particular issue in more detail?
I think, is that the best course then, before it goes to council to vote? Can it be done in that way?
There will certainly be meetings of the Task and Finish group before it goes back to Constitution, I think, but it is entirely up to you, Councillor Howard.
No, okay, no, that sounds sensible. Thank you.
Okay, have you got a seconder?
I hope so.
Councillor Fox?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Fox, you're muted.
Just a quick question of John, really, before I decide how to vote. If you're talking about a body, would that have to be from the same party? Because in the case of like Chris Ash this year, he's the only Liberal, so he's going to get pregnant, but you know what I'm saying,
yeah.
But if it was a female one party or an independent, a single independent could they have a voting body that was from a different party? That's what I'm saying.
I think that's a really good point, and I think I think there should be a bond of trust that even if that vote was different too, then they should be allowed to see that vote through and take the pressure off that council. Because as you say, if it's an independent and they're on their own, there should be a bond of trust that their buddy would honour their way of voting.
Well, because that's what's important. So okay, that makes it clear if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think Councillor Howard's just asking them to relook at this and see if there's anything can be done. I think that's what you're asking for, John, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement, or does it need to go to the vote? If you're not in agreement, can you raise your virtual hand, please? John, your hand's still up. I guess that's.
Oh, sorry.
Sure. No, Councillor John Fox. Sorry. Okay, so everybody's in agreement. Okay, that recommendation is passed. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 9, Adult Social Care Annual Complaints Report 2019 to 2020, pages 119 to 126 of the agenda. I would like to welcome the following officers who will present this report: Tina Hornsby, Head of Integration; Charlotte Black, Service Director, Adults and Safeguarding; Debbie McQuaid, Assistant Director, Adults and Safeguarding.
Sorry to interrupt, Chairman. I think you might have skipped an item. It's we're on to item 8 now, the Portfolio Progress Report.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Sorry, everybody. Agenda item 8, sorry, thank you. We now move to agenda item 8. I would like to welcome Councillor Fitzgerald, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Health and Public Health, to present this report alongside the following officers: Tina Hornsby, Head of Integration; Charlotte Black, Service Director of Adults and Safeguarding; Debbie McQuaid, Assistant Director, Adults and Safeguarding. Okay, who's like to present this report, please?
I think it might be me, Mr. Chairman, but I was hoping for a moment there I'd got away with it.
Nearly.
And we'd skip to the end.
You nearly. I was going to make you wait. I was just going to make you wait a little bit longer.
Much as I know most of the members of the committee are always thrilled to see me, and to hear the report that I bring to you regularly. So, of course, it's a pleasure to be back here again tonight. So, if you just indulge me for a second, I'll run through the highlights of all the great work done by the team since I last came before you. So, unprecedented times, so the impact of COVID-19 continues to be significant for adult social care. It's impacted on both the cost of care as well as increasing demand pressures. Whilst national COVID-19 grants have been welcome, they've not gone far enough to address the additional costs faced by the council, including the investments the council is having to make into the care sector to ensure stability and sustainability. The report before you updates on the key activities relating to COVID-19, but as I say, these are some of the highlights. Although responding COVID-19 has been a major focus for commissioners, there are also some long-term areas of work underway, notwithstanding the COVID thing, as I said. So place-based commissioning development. And by the way, any details that you want to delve into after I finish, by all means, ask me, or one of the officers, no doubt, will be more than capable of answering. There's also an in-depth review of our learning disability housing strategy underway. There's a longer-term review of day services with establishment of a day services workstream in the Adults Positive Challenge Programme, commonly known as APC, if you see that referenced anywhere in the reports. There's been many changes to hospital flows during the pandemic, and we were concerned to know how this affected service users' experience. We therefore asked Health Watch to carry out a local review of experience via telephone interviews with 35 patients. The survey did reveal some issues around communication and coordination of health and social care. The recommendations have been positively received as being able to support the system in improving the experience of discharge both during and post-COVID. The paper also provides an update on the operation activity which has taken place during the pandemic, although we found ways to do things remotely, of course, like this meeting and wherever possible. The level activity has been maintained in most areas. Changes, though, have been seen in the reduced number of referrals for new clients from hospital and the increased referrals from the community into adult early help. That's the team there, of course. There's also been a reduction in referrals to reablement, although good outcomes continue for those going through the service. There's been an overall increase in assessments and reviews have been seen in response to the crisis, but also in relation to plan reviews, where we've redeployed some of the resources into these at times where their usual service might have been less busy. The numbers receiving long-term support have remained mostly consistent throughout the year. There's been a reduction in safeguarding concerns and enquiries, which is potentially due to less people having contact with those that might raise a concern. There's been a national data collection on this, and we're awaiting the analysis in order to understand it, if we're just outliers in this trend or whether it's a common thing across the country. The APC challenge continues and is forecasting delivery of planned level of savings, slightly adjusted to reflect the impact of COVID-19. Many of you following the budget situation will know exactly what the impacts of that have been. The service user survey, which was carried out just prior to the first lockdown, overall continues to place Peterborough positively compared with other councils, which is always good. In relation to the ASCOF metrics, Tina will give you the analogy of what that is, which that survey feeds the council remain above average on 5 out of 7 of the metrics. Indicators where the council was above the national or regional average were social care related quality of life score, the proportion of people who use services who have control over their daily life, the proportion of people who use services who reported that they had as much social contact as they would like, the proportion of people who use services who find it easy to find information about services, the proportion of people who use services who feel safe. A couple of more paragraphs. The indicators where the council performed less well were the percentage of adults using services who are satisfied with the care and support they receive, and the proportion of people who use services who say those services made them feel safe and secure. Penultimate paragraph, folks, you'll be pleased to hear. What the survey does reveal is an overall increase in the levels of health care needs for the long-term client survey, which can be linked to some impacts of quality of life related indicators. These factors can be fed into our post-COVID commissioning programs and the final year of our adult positive challenge program. And finally, the region usually runs a self-assessment process annually, as you'll be aware, which feeds this overview report. However, due to the COVID pandemic, this process has been delayed and is now due to complete in September 2021, at which time we will be able to report back on how the in-year has compared, or our year has compared with other councils in the region. I'll leave it there. There's enough in the report for you to get into, and I'm happy to answer questions if I can, or just refer back to the officers for any detail. I'll just have to move my screens around. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for now.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. I'm not quite sure how I missed you, but okay, move on to questions.
Easily done. I'm the shy, retiring type.
Yes, okay, we believe that. Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you. I mean, this is a really good report, and I know there's been a lot of work done through this last year of COVID. I'm just wondering about coming out of COVID. We've got a lot of people who are carers, and I'm just wondering about the people who have been locked down for the year, coming out, having been caring for somebody who need that respite, because otherwise they may end up in the mental health, needing the mental health treatment themselves, or physical, because it can get very physical. I'm just wondering how that is being looked at for the future. I know you've done some really good work, but I know it's very costly to get somebody into respite and things, but it's something that I'm really aware of that people are looking at. Thank you.
Anybody like to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that.
Thank you.
You take that, Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte.
I do have something to add about something called hidden carers that you may or may not know about, but Charlotte, by all means, you lead on this. Yeah.
So yes, it's a really important point that the committee has raised, and I think, although inevitably during the peak of the pandemic, we've been very focused on care homes and care settings. We're very aware that the burden that sort of informal carers carry, and by that we sort of mean family carers, who've obviously now kind of weathered a number of lockdowns, and So we have, and Adrian and his team have worked very well with us in terms of adult social care. So throughout the pandemic, we've been contacting carers to check, is there any additional support they need? And that includes not just those who are known to adult social care, but those who are, you know, in a sense, not necessarily wanting direct contact with statutory social care, but just need to be supported. So we've tried to do that throughout the pandemic, and we are now we are bracing ourselves to a certain extent to the impact of sort of several lockdowns and the sort of what we call latent demand, which we think is probably going to emerge. We have had an increase in people with carers of people with learning disabilities asking for respite care. So we think that it is going to result in increased demand. Plus our day services haven't been able to operate as normal. So at the moment, it's a bit of an unknown quantity, but it's a very important issue that the committee's raised. And I know features a lot in Adrian's thinking and also in adult social care thinking about something that we've really got to get on the front foot about as much as we possibly can.
I'm happy just to give a little bit of an update also, Chair, on some initiative that we're launching tomorrow that I just signed off. I don't know whether Charlotte will know or the team will know. It's about hidden carers as well. So particularly in light of the pandemic and people having to spend a lot more time at home, whether it's looking after, you know, a loved one, a partner, or the pressure here has been enormous because there's been a kind of revision back to, you know, looking after somebody in the home and not being able to get that help outside. So there is a campaign I'm launching tomorrow to highlight about hidden carers, and so you will get the email, but it's about an initiative called Caring Together that the City Council are doing in Cambridgeshire County Council. So look out for that email tomorrow. I think it's going out tomorrow, that says, you know, you needn't do this on your own, you needn't stay hidden, there is some help available, and you just need to, you know, ask for it through ourselves or the county. So that's something that, you know, will be good news, and I think we should promote, because there's a lot of people that are going unrecognised, as they don't even know themselves they're carers, or they don't recognise themselves as carers. So it's good that we're picking this up and we're promoting it. And as I say, I think that goes out tomorrow. Okay, so I hope that's useful info.
Councillor Aiken, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excellent report, Wayne. I just have one question. Workforce funding grant. I noticed that we got 397,000, and it's got to be used by the end of March 2021. Can you tell me whether we've spent that money, what we're doing with it? There's obviously a tight deadline there, so has it already been put to use? If you can just elaborate on that, that'd be great.
You're muted, Wayne.
Yeah, that's the most favourite expression of the year. You're muted. Charlotte, do you want to elaborate? I think it's all gone, and the actual difficulty is where, if anything, is the next funding coming from?
Yes, that's
probably more pressing a question, because believe me, we've had no trouble in spending the grant money that we have, whether it's on, you know, infection control or this grant you're talking about or anything else. Charlotte, do you want anything to add to that specific grant?
Yeah, certainly. So the grant has, exactly as Councillor Fitzgerald has said, it's been distributed amongst our social care providers to help them meet the costs of the workforce costs associated with COVID, and that's everything from you know, lateral flow tests, needing to ask our staff to isolate because of a care home outbreak, and making sure staff are accessing vaccines. So it's largely been distributed. We have been through it, sort of fairly discussed it with our provider organisations about where they feel that money should go, but the intention was for it to get out into the social care providers, and that's where the majority of it has gone.
Thank you for that. I mean, the reason I was asking was I'm concerned specifically about care homes and the workers that are in those care homes, and the fact that obviously they've gone through a difficult year. What additional funding might they get to help them once we start to reach the, well, from now on really, but you know, sort of after COVID? It'd be nice to know that, you know, they're receiving any financial help that might be available to them.
So at this stage, as Councillor Fitzgerald said, that our main concern really is that there has been quite a lot of short-term funding which has been made available to the care sector. I think really the question is the longer-term plans and what happens when that stops. The government is obviously having to review on a sort of fairly regular basis, you know, what the arrangements are around additional funding for things like PPE and the workforce grant. But we do, it is a current kind of question that we're trying to wrestle with. And obviously part of what we will be doing is working with our providers and also supporting them in their efforts to recruit staff. So that's one of the things that the workforce funding was used for, was actually to support a recruitment campaign, for example. Because actually their biggest challenge is recruiting and retaining, as you say, staff who do the most remarkable job really, and need to be congratulated and celebrated in my view.
Exactly. I think that, yeah, that's exactly where I'm coming from. It's more the workforce, you know, there's plenty of money out there for tests, PPE and everything else, because that's been highlighted in the media. But the people that sort of do get forgotten about are the workers. The people that are in the care homes working day in, day out, but obviously there'll be a time where there's burnout, and that was my concern more than anything.
Kim, it's been very challenging both for council staff, you know, all the team in adult social care, as well as the external providers. But from a finance point of view, we gave a 10% uplift to all care homes and domiciliary care. So there's been a substantial amount of money spent across a range of things, a substantial amount. I mean, if you did want to know the figures, but I have spoken before about them in budget scrutiny and the like. So it's well documented that we've done. As far as staff, you know, care homes are struggling in terms of the money we're able to pay them versus, you know, the money that they might require, because you're right, you know, it's difficult to recruit and maintain staff in the care sector, and there are good and bad examples, you know, across the board, but they are protected by, you know, minimum wage and living wage and so on. So I think there has been a general desire to pay people more, but the costs in reality of care homes, because they've had to bring in agency staff and all sorts of people where they've had COVID infections and been short staffed. So there has been money going into the care homes, and much of it has reached staff, whether they work full-time or part-time or agency. But the problem is maintaining that in terms of the current budget envelope. And of course, there is now talk of the social care paper being a reality and how that's, you know, funded. But I think it more progress would have been made by government had we not been where we are with this. Nobody could have foreseen this COVID pandemic. So there is some work. I don't know, Charlotte, I'm right about the social care white paper, aren't I? I can't remember whether it's out now or whether it's muted.
There is a white paper that sort of is focused on health and social care.
Yeah.
Yes, that is currently out at the moment, and that there are some. I mean, a lot of that is largely focused on the NHS, but there are some elements of that that do talk about social care.
I think it's on government's agenda to solve the whole thing, which does filter down to, you know, the shop floor level, as it were, the care worker at the coalface. But I think as a country, we need to tackle this, and I've said it before, and at the moment we haven't tackled it, but no wonder what's happened in the last year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Jess. Through you, just one question. Now that we're hopefully coming out of lockdown, a lot of the community-based COVID support groups will be disbanding. I really just want some sort of assurance that we've got capacity to take on that assistance where needed? Because a lot of elderly people have now become dependent on that assistance.
Neil, I'll give you my 2 pennies worth of what I know from a political perspective. The team members might be. I don't think we've any intention of disbanding the main thing, which is the hub, which you will know about. I'm pretty sure that we are keeping that come what may. And from that hub spread a lot of tentacles into the community groups. And I think we will be encouraging community groups to stay on board and keep the momentum of support going, because there's all this talk of long COVID and all these other things. You know, there's no silver bullet when we get to August just because people have had a vaccination. I think the knock-on effects of what's been happening to people's mental health, their well-being, their employment, all sorts of other things are going to need support beyond the summer this year. And as an administration, I think we've already said we will be keeping as much of that infrastructure in place as possible. Ladies, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, I think
And Adrian's there as well, so he'll confirm that.
Just to add to that, Wayne, is the voluntary sector services that we commission. And throughout the last 12 months, for whatever reason, they have been underutilised. So we just need to ensure that actually, you know, in the local communities, working with our health partners, etc., that people really are aware of what resources are available, what resources can support them. So I think, you know, it's not about stepping back or stepping down. It's about fully utilising all of those resources that we've already got, including the hub.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Fitzgerald, you mentioned referrals from hospital has reduced. Is this a concern?
Charlotte or Debbie, either or.
Do you want me to take that, Charlotte?
Hospital's your favourite subject.
Hospital is my favourite subject, Wayne. So I think the reality is when COVID happened, we had to completely restructure the way that we work, and that wasn't just the local authorities, that was working with our community health providers and the CCG. As part of that restructure, there were investment in other services, and as a result of that, there was a reduction of the number of referrals coming into our reablement services. So the demand was still there, but people were being discharged from hospital much earlier in their pathway, which meant that the acuity of those people and the support they required was more health-based than social care-based. So that was the step change, and that was why we saw a reduction in the number of referrals that were coming through to social care and the reablement services. But that demand is still there.
So it's no concerns there.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce, is that legacy hand? Obviously it is. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'd like to note the recommendations in the report, which is for the committee to note the update on the work of adult and social care during year 2021 and the results of 2020 service user survey published in December 2020 and the learning actions and arising. Is everybody happy with that recommendation? If you're not, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, I'd like to thank Councillor Fitzgerald and everybody else for that report. Much appreciated.
I don't think I need to stay on for the next bit because I don't think I'm in it.
No, you're not listed on agenda item 9.
No, just on the complaints basis. I better go now. See you all later, folks. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Now move on to agenda item 9, adult and social care. Annual Complaints Report 2019-20, pages 119 and 126. I know you heard this the second time, and I do apologise. I'd like to welcome the following officers who will present this report: Tina Hornsby, Head of Integration; Charlotte Black, Service Director, Adults and Safeguarding; Debbie McQuaid, Assistant Director, Adults and Safeguarding. Who would like to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Tina's going to present the report.
Yeah, I'm going to present it for you. I'm just going to flick to my quick notes. So the report you've got is our annual complaints report from actually the financial year 1920. It's taken a bit of time to come to you because of all the other pressures of work. It details some information around the compliments that we've logged and the 64 complaints that we received during that year. As with previous years, our largest volume of complaints were in relation to delivery of direct care services, and the most common theme was delayed or failed service. As we specify in the report, the adult social care statutory complaints regulations don't actually specify a timescale for responding, but we've chosen to apply a local standard of 20 working days to track against. And for the first 3 quarters of the year, 65% of complaints were responded to in that time. But you'll note that in Q4, we were impacted towards the end by COVID coming and hitting us, and therefore the overall completion within 20 days in that quarter was only 42%. Of the 64 complaints, we had 14 of them escalated to a senior manager to do a further review because the complainant wasn't happy with the response. And there was also 5 complaints reviewed by the local government ombudsman in that year. 2 of them were upheld, and there's a summary of those 2 complaints in the report at paragraph 4.7. The other thing that we cover in the report is the important element of complaints, which is what we can learn from them. And we always receive a quarterly report through to our practice governance board to feed into our wider practice learning and practice development. And we detail in the report so the key more organisation-wide learning that we applied was a review of our assessment processes following some complaints around delays and waiting times, a review of our standard letters following complaints around the accessibility and of the letters that we were sending out to try and make them more understandable, and also to develop some easy read versions. And a lot of work, and we referred to it earlier as well, around our pathway for carers and how we ensure that we can support carers without them having to go through an unnecessary, really long assessment process. If they need some urgent help, how we get them the urgent help as quick as we can. And then the other thing to note is that, as I referred to earlier, the majority of our complaints are around directly provided services, and for those complaints we address them at the time with the provider, but we also log them on our notification of concerns system, so we can look at them in wider themes with providers, but also make sure we revisit them when we go back to do the contract reviews for that provider to ensure that the steps they've said they would take have been taken. And I will stop there and leave it open to questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I know that a lot of people look at complaints and they go, oh, don't take it, but there's some really good stuff in here. I mean, for me, I really like the idea of the culture of learning from mistakes and putting that into your learning profile. I'm just wondering, before things get to the escalator, there's a number of complaints. It's just going to a different complaint system that I know of. And for transparency, do you have any kind of dip sampling by independents that come in and just have a look to make sure that it's been the right procedures, that there's proportionality in the decisions, etc.? And is that something that you might take on? I'm not saying that you have to, it's just, I know of something else, and it just helps that complaint system sometimes. I hope I'm not putting you in an awkward position.
No, not at all, Councillor Bisbee. I think it's a good thought, actually. It's not something, I don't think, I'm checking with Debbie and Tina, I don't think anyone dip samples our complaints.
No, that doesn't happen. I guess in terms of that independent review of complaints, it's a different process in children's, where when we get to that escalated stage, we will commission an independent person to completely review the complaint and our response, and you know, that person will make any recommendations. As I say, it's a very different process to adults, but it is something certainly we can take back and discuss as part of our practice governance board that Tina mentioned, because actually that would be that would be a really positive way forward. In terms of the when complaints get escalated, ordinarily they get reviewed by myself or Jackie Galway, who's the other assistant director, and as a result of that, because I look at it quite independently, we will feed back the learning from anything that we've reviewed, because we will look at it slightly differently, but it's not completely independent. You're absolutely right. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, if I can just come back on it, it's for me, it's not about reviewing the actual complaint, it's about the process, making sure that the process has been done correctly and proportionately. And I just think it might be, you know, when you go to those HMIC, I just think this may be a way of stepping up. And just from my experience, I'm just thinking that this might be good for you to do.
Charlotte, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think it's a really good thought, and it's something we could take back and discuss with our internal audit team as well, because it might be something they could actually fulfil internally without us sort of having to commission anything external, because they're pretty good at challenging us and looking at our processes. So thank you very much. We'll take that away.
Yeah, there are probably some people that do that voluntary as well, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Tina, you've partly answered the question that I was going to ask, but perhaps you could enlarge on the answer. It's 4.9 examples of the service level learning and action, and bullet point 2 talks about the complaints around failure to communicate information. Review of letters undertaken to ensure that you give correct information at the correct time. My question is, what was the result of this review? And you've talked about the easy read version, which is music to my ears, I have to say. And how are you measuring the effectiveness of the letters now? Are complaints about the letters fewer in number? What kind of feedback are you getting since you've made those changes? Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we reviewed, we had very many letters, I think is it. So we had many different letters for different occasions, and then they weren't always as brief as they might be. So we actually consolidated our letters into a much smaller suite. Do you know, I can't remember, I think it's something like 15 now we have, just and you can tweak them a bit to make them tailored to the person, but the core content is clear and the same. So it's difficult to answer on the numbers of complaints, because actually this year our numbers of complaints have dropped anyway, and I think it's to do with COVID, so it's hard to say that we could really make the analogy, but I know that workers have received them positively, so that I think they're sensing that the communication's going across better. I think overall communication is still something we've got to work on. I think we don't always think to tell our customers and our service users things that they need to know at the right time. So sometimes we have discussions with professionals and we forget that the important person to tell is actually the carer or the person. So that's about really when we don't give the letter at all. But as far as the letter review's gone, I think it's been well received from what we can see.
Thanks.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We're talking about complaints. Has the council suffered any financial implication as a result of anything going against them? Have they? I mean, how does it work? I mean, what's the remedy? Do you, if somebody complains and if the complaint is valid, do you have to pay them something in damages, or how does that work?
Debbie, do you want to talk about the ombudsman process?
Yes. So ordinarily, until it gets to the LGO, there is no, there is no compensation or payment. When it reaches the LGO, there may be, the LGO will make a decision in terms of, what the council should pay towards that person that's complained based on, undue distress, timelines, etc. And in the two that were upheld, so the difficulty is with the LGO, when they uphold a complaint, it can just be, the complaint can be 10 pages long, and if there's a minor injustice, which was one of the complaints, it's still deemed as upheld. There's not anything, partially upheld or anything like that. There was no financial compensation with that one. And with the other complaint, that was due to, charging somebody that was self-funding. There was a minor payment for the distress caused to the individual. And by minor, I think, off the top of my head, I think it was about £200. We haven't paid out, in terms of adult social care, they're the only LGO complaints, but we've not paid out substantial sums of money at all.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I would like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to note the summary of adult and social care complaints and compliments as well. Mustn't forget compliments received between 1st of April 2019 and 31st of March 2020, and the learning and actions taken as a result. Are the committee satisfied that we have done this? If you're not satisfied, can you raise your virtual hand, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Tina. Much appreciated your attendance this evening. Thank you. And thank you for the hard work you do. Okay, you may leave the meeting if you so wish. Okay, moving on. Agenda item 10. We now move on to agenda item 10, monitoring scrutiny recommendations, pages 127, 132 of the agenda. I'll hand over to David to introduce his report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual standing item on the agenda to give members the opportunity to review the responses to recommendations previously made by the committee and determine if any further monitoring is required. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies if I've raised this at the wrong place, because I thought the minutes was more about the actions. I just want to refer to the actions that we agreed at the last meeting on page 6 of the minutes of the last meeting, where we're asking for the update reports, the briefing notes, and in particular the one I'm especially interested in is the one regarding Article 4 directions. It's something which put forward a motion 2 years ago, and there doesn't seem to have been much action by the council since. But I just want an update, a quick update, about the briefing notes, and there's other ones mentioned there as well, if that's possible. Thanks.
Is that okay?
Yeah, if I may just chip in, Chair. The briefing note on the Article 4 directions, that's definitely in the works. I think Anne Kehoe is dealing with that one. And with regard to the other recommendations, I will make sure they're all chased up and dealt with, and the responses given.
Thank you, David. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'd like to note the recommendation in the report, which is for the committee to consider the responses from Cabinet member and officers to recommendations made at previous meetings as attached in Appendix 1 to the report, and provide feedback, including whether further monitoring of each recommendation is required. Everybody happy with that? If not, please raise your hand. No hands raised. Okay, move on to agenda item 11. Forward plan of executive decisions, pages 133 to 174. Are there any items on the forward plan that the committee would wish to receive further information on?
Just to note, Chair, for the committee, that we're a new version of the plan has been emailed since the agenda was published. So
I did see that come out today. Yeah, thank you. And we can only advise the committee that can only request information on items relating to the committee, obviously. No hands raised. Okay, right. I'd like to thank everybody attending this evening. Close the meeting. I look forward to seeing nearly everybody tomorrow evening.